We've all been cold.
Hi, this is Tom Schnauz, Peter Gould, and Vince Gilligan, and you're watching a master at work here. Bob Odenkirk just having a run at a courtroom scene.
Nope, that's Michelle MacLaren.
There's the lovely Michelle MacLaren.
The directing away.
He's not usually on camera. But talk about that run he's doing here. What's going on here?
This is all footage that Michelle shot for the epic episode 2 montage, which shows Jimmy doing all his public defender overflow work, all his contract law work.
But there was someone else.
Michelle and I both agreed that we needed to see him in the courtroom. Originally, there was a version of this where we tried to simplify the sequence and not have the courtroom in it. And Michelle fought and said she really thought we needed the courtroom also. And so she rolled on this single setup with Bob and a series of extras who come in and out. And Bob is improvising all this. And there's not an awful lot of improv on the show.
Not typically.
But Bob improvised this whole thing. And when we saw it, unfortunately, there's only a little tiny bit that could make it into the episode. But this is the perfect digital extra, because this is something that is really worth watching, but we couldn't quite fit into the show. And Bob is making up these cases, and it's totally off the cuff. And he's a damn good lawyer.
He's a damn good lawyer and a damn good improv artist. Because I got to think, I'd love to have him for this thing we're doing now, because he could talk about what he was thinking. And probably, I'm guessing, it'd be something like, God, buddy, I was just waiting for them to just fucking yell cut. And it's just like, how much of this are you going to need here? You know? But he stayed in character for this thing you're watching is like 11 minutes long, and he just stayed in character for
I actually just walked out and made a sandwich and came back.
Yeah.
Doing this. It's so long.
And what it reminds me of is Bob sent me a book years ago when we were first talking, even the first whisper of a Saul Goodman show. He sent me a book, and I think you've read it too, called How Can You Defend These People?
Yes.
Which is a memoir written by a defense attorney about his years as a public defender. At least that's how I remember it.
In Washington, D.C.,
In Washington,
D.C.,
in the 70s, I think.
I believe you're right. Yeah.
And there are just so many colorful characters, and it's so fascinating, the work that this guy does, and also how much passion he puts into it. He's anything but a slickster, detached lawyer, somebody who truly cares. I think Bob felt that, I think the message he gave me by giving me this book was he thought there could be some real law on a Saul Goodman show. It didn't have to be all made up. There could be a little bit of the texture of real life. And that's one of the things I'm most proud of in this montage sequence is it is a little taste of how the law really works in every courtroom, every courthouse building in America, where there's a lot of it is negotiation and behind the scenes stuff, and especially folks who don't have the money to hire their own lawyer are getting someone who may or may not have the passion to defend them and do a good job. It's an assembly line, at least in this sequence.
Yeah.
And he's doing a great job.
He does. He's wonderful. And not to say it's always, well, I mean, I guess there are times when the justice system probably does feel like assembly line work, but it's just,
It's the assembly line of justice, though.
the assembly line of justice. No, but not to sound pejorative
not
of
at
it,
all.
but sometimes it probably does feel that way in real life, but it's a hard-working folks. Probably a lot of them don't get paid that well, but trying to make the system work as well as it can. And
in preparing for the series, as a group of writers, we went downtown to the courts in L.A. and just went from courtroom to courtroom, kind of sitting in and watching. And I think one of the things that stuck with us was how absolutely boring it was.
Yeah.
And that we came up with this term of boredom in the court, which is, I think, inspired a lot of what happened in episode 1 of waiting for Jimmy McGill to come into the courtroom, and just people just sitting there and looking at their watches and waiting. And there's a lot of times when people are just like writing on notepads and nothing's happening.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that, going into this, I mean, speaking for myself, and I bet you guys would agree, I am not a lawyer. You guys are not lawyers. I was scared I was very nervous going into this show, in the sense of there have been a lot of great law shows. There's been a lot of great law movies, and we are not lawyers. And how are we going to add to that? How are we going to distinguish ourselves? How are we going to come up with something different, let alone better? And that boredom in the court thing that we figured the one thing we haven't seen in movies such as shows such as Law and Order or The Practice or L.A. Law or movies such as even the Caine Mutiny or what are all these great, Perry Mason, for goodness sake, Perry Mason, all these great shows and movies. One thing we don't see is people not talking in the courtroom. But of course, this scene here you're watching is nothing but our Jimmy just gabbing away.
I think you can tell he's a macho man.
And he tells a story about each one of these guys.
I know. I love how he makes this stuff up. Just
he just broke the extras up. He broke the extras up.
I love that. I love that. That's a great touch.
One of the things I love about Bob's comedy, and I think it comes out here, is there's nothing mean about it. He's never putting people down. There's something very, I don't know, it's almost silly about his comedy tastes. There's a generosity to it that I really appreciate and like. And I think it translates into the character here. He really does care about his clients. He's working his ass off.
I think it's an excellent point. I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. Hey, talk about, where are we, by the way? Because this is the only time we've been in this room ever, as far as I know. Is this in the real court building?
This is
looking at me. I have no idea. I wasn't here for this.
Oh, you weren't here for this. I thought you were here for all of my episodes.
No, I was only when I was not scouting or doing work for 103 did I pop over to this.
This is actually, this entire montage sequence was shot in our the downtown courthouse building.
I was there for some of it.
The only part that wasn't in the courthouse building was the part with Mike in his booth outside at that parking lot. But this is a courtroom that's on the very top floor, and I believe it's actually used during the day for training. Oh. And so the crew had to shoot this late.
That part is in the cut.
This
bit's in the cut.
This is in the cut.
To make some cookies.
He wrote a book about it. There was, in the original draft of this montage, he defends a lady who's an arsonist who set her husband on fire, and she lights a fire in the middle of while he's making this big defending speech. Suddenly there's this fire. His papers all get set on fire, and the bailiff uses a fire extinguisher.
That was in the original script.
That was in the original script, and Michelle loved it, and I had to wrestle her to the ground so she wouldn't do that part, but she got everything else.
Yeah. That's the great thing about having Michelle MacLaren as your director, because there was definitely times I worked with her on Breaking Bad where we had to cut something for budget or for time for the script, and she was
they're laughing again.
She managed to figure out a way to get
it work.
Yeah.
Well, my God, look at the end of at 5:13.
Before 5:13.
Yes. When Hank gets killed.
When Hank
the shootout begins.
The way that thing is scripted, it was her directing. George Mastras wrote it, and the way that George wrote this amazing, intense shootout at the end of it, and then I had to be the bad guy. I said, we just don't have the time and the money, so let's just go off them pointing guns at each other, Hank and Gomez and the white supremacist guys, and then just the sound of gunfire over black. And George looked like I just killed his dog or something. and I don't blame him. And then, but Michelle, damned if she didn't wind up shooting an entire shootout, even though it wasn't even scripted.
Episode 405, Shotgun. The montage was scripted, and again, we had to cut it for budgetary reasons, and all that stuff with Aaron Paul, stretching his face and wrapping, pressing his face up against the window as Mike's driving. We got that while shooting the other scene that was in the tow car. She would just radio to the actors and say, do this, do that, do this.
Awesome. And she's great.
Here's the thing is she's not just relentless. She understands production so well.
Oh, yeah. Because that's where she started. She started as a producer.
She started as a producer. So she knows how to get something really impressive on film without necessarily using all the resources you'd expect. And this montage sequence is just a great example of that, where she planned it to every detail, and the crew was just racing from floor to floor. She knew exactly where the camera was going to be, what the shots were going to be, and she raced through it. And I couldn't be prouder.
I
of the
was there for a
sequence.
little bit of the montage, like the cup sequence, and like she had that being set up while another shot was being done in another part of the hallway, and it was just like she'd bang, get one shot, go to the other camera, they're ready while the other camera's going to move and set up another shot. It was just so fun to just be there and watch.
She
Just
leapfrogs.
as a spectator, as a crew member, I'm sure it's like, oh my god. But as a guy who just wanted to go by and just see how things were going on.
She's a
Just
great
amazing,
director.
yeah.
She really is.
I knew her. I'd probably say I knew her way back when. I met her. She was the line producer on Harsh Realm. That's when I met her. Harsh Realm was a spinoff of the X-Files. It wasn't a spinoff. But it was another 10/13 show concurrent with the X-Files, and that's when I met her. And then she wound up being our line producer on X-Files, and then she got to direct
Your episode.
John Doe, an episode of Road X-Files called John Doe. It was the first thing she'd ever directed, professionally at least, and she just killed it, and she was just off and running.
Just like she killed this.